The shattering betrayal. Evelyn Carter had always believed that stability was her greatest achievement. At 50, she still managed her modest home with quiet pride, her hands moving gracefully between household tasks and her part-time job at the library. Her adult daughter, Amelia, often teased her for her devotion to order, but Evelyn liked to think that predictability meant security. When she discovered she was pregnant again, an unexpected but miraculous surprise, she convinced herself that life still had gifts left to offer. The news of the baby filled her with a fragile joy. She envisioned Daniel, her husband of nearly 3 decades, softening at the thought of fatherhood once more. She imagined his tired eyes lighting up, their marriage rekindled by the prospect of a new beginning. But as weeks turned into months, her illusions began to unravel. Daniel grew distant, his once familiar routines dissolving into late nights and secretive phone calls. He brushed away her questions with irritation, claiming the demands of work left him exhausted. Evelyn, weary but hopeful, tried to believe him. She told herself he was merely stressed, that she must be patient. After all, hadn't they endured so much already? Marriage, she thought, was a matter of perseverance. Amelia noticed the change more quickly. At 25, sharp-eyed and outspoken, she had inherited little of her mother's cautious optimism. "Is hiding something," Amelia whispered one evening as they folded laundry together. "Mom, open your eyes. He barely looks at you anymore." Evelyn hushed her daughter, clinging to denial as if it were a lifeline. Yet the unease gnawed at her, making sleep shallow and meals tasteless. Her body, carrying the weight of new life, also carried the heavier burden of suspicion. The truth revealed itself on a stormy Friday. Evelyn had prepared dinner, a quiet effort to reclaim their old rhythm. The roast cooled on the table as she waited. Hours passed until headlights finally swept across the window. Daniel entered, smelling faintly of perfume that was not hers. He muttered an apology for his lateness, his tone detached, his gaze elsewhere. "Who is she?" Evelyn asked softly, the words trembling from her lips. Daniel's shoulders stiffened, his expression hardening. For a moment she thought he would deny it. But then he exhaled, almost with relief. "Her name is Clara. She's 35. She makes me feel alive again. Evelyn, I can't keep pretending with you." The world seemed to tilt. Evelyn clutched the back of a chair for balance, her breath shallow. "You're leaving me? When I'm carrying your child?" His eyes flickered with something between guilt and irritation. "I didn't ask for this, baby. I'm done living a lie. Clara understands me in ways you never could." Amelia stormed into the room, her face flushed with fury. "You coward," she spat. "You're abandoning your family for some passing thrill." Daniel's silence was its own confession. He turned, grabbed his coat, and walked out as if decades of shared history could be shrugged off like an inconvenience. The slam of the door reverberated through the house, louder than thunder. Evelyn sank into a chair, numbness stealing over her limbs. Amelia wrapped her arms around her, whispering, "We'll be okay, Mom. He doesn't deserve us." But Evelyn's mind echoed with Daniel's words, cruel and final. "I didn't ask for this, baby." The following days blurred into one another. Evelyn moved mechanically, her swollen belly a reminder of both vulnerability and defiance. Neighbors whispered when they saw her alone, their glances heavy with pity. She endured it quietly, but every glance pressed on the wound Daniel had left behind. One evening, as she folded tiny clothes Amelia had bought for the baby, Evelyn finally allowed herself to cry. Not the restrained tears of disappointment, but deep, shaking sobs that seemed to wring sorrow from her bones. Amelia held her once more, fierce and protective. "Listen to me," Amelia said firmly, brushing her mother's damp hair from her face. "You don't need him. We'll raise this child together. And one day, you'll realize he freed you from a prison you didn't even see." Evelyn searched her daughter's determined gaze. Perhaps Amelia was right. Perhaps what felt like an ending was the first painful step towards something unknown. Still, when she lay awake at night, her hands resting protectively over her unborn child, she could not quiet the question that haunted her. How do you rebuild a life when the person you trusted most has walked away? She did not yet know that her answer would come from the most unexpected place, from someone who had once known loss just as deeply as she did. But for now, she closed her eyes against the ache, holding on to the faintest thread of resolve, to survive, for Amelia, and for the child growing within her. The roast from that fateful night remained untouched in the refrigerator until Amelia threw it away days later. Evelyn could not bring herself to eat it, for it carried the taste of betrayal. Yet as she watched her daughter clear the dish, she realized that no matter how bitter life had become, she was not entirely alone. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was enough to keep going. Picking up the pieces. The weeks following Daniel's departure were marked by exhaustion that seemed to seep into every corner of Evelyn's life. Each morning she forced herself to rise, though her body felt heavier than the child she carried. Bills gathered on the kitchen counter like silent accusations, their numbers stark reminders of how swiftly stability could crumble. Daniel had withdrawn his financial support almost immediately, claiming through a Kate message that he had moved on and that she would have to manage without him. Amelia, defiant and unwavering, shouldered more hours at the cafe where she worked. She returned home each night with weary eyes but a smile she crafted for her mother's sake. Evelyn recognized the sacrifice, and it pained her to see her daughter's youth bent beneath responsibility. "What about your dreams, Amelia?" Evelyn asked one evening as they sat together, folding napkins into the drawer. "My dream is to make sure you and the baby are okay," Amelia replied simply. Her tone carried no resentment, only a fierce loyalty that reminded Evelyn how lucky she was, despite everything. Yet loyalty could not shield them from judgment. In their small town, whispers traveled faster than the wind. Women at the grocery store glanced at Evelyn with a mixture of pity and quiet disdain. "Poor thing, abandoned at her age," she overheard one woman murmur. Evelyn pretended not to hear, but the words lodged like thorns in her chest. One afternoon, overwhelmed by dizziness, Evelyn collapsed while waiting at the hospital for her routine prenatal checkup. She awoke moments later to find a stranger kneeling beside her. His hands were steady as he offered her water, his voice calm yet urgent. "Breathe slowly," he instructed. "You fainted, but you're going to be fine." Evelyn blinked, disoriented, before focusing on the man. He appeared to be in his mid-50s, his hair streaked with silver, his expression worn by years of quiet struggle. Yet his eyes held a depth of kindness that steadied her. "I'm Michael Hayes," he introduced himself after ensuring she could sit upright. "My son has an appointment here. I saw you collapse and couldn't just stand by." Evelyn murmured her thanks, embarrassed by her vulnerability. She tried to brush it off, insisting she was fine, but Michael did not leave until he was certain she could walk without faltering. As they parted, Evelyn thought no more of it, assuming she would never see him again. Yet life, unpredictable and often cruel, occasionally surprised with moments of grace. A week later, she found herself in line at the pharmacy, juggling a bag of baby essentials Amelia had urged her to buy. Her balance wavered, and once again Michael appeared, this time holding his own purchases. "You again," he said with a small, disarming smile. "I'm starting to think fate's trying to introduce us properly." Despite herself, Evelyn laughed, a sound she had not heard from her own lips in weeks. Something about Michael's demeanor was disarming. He did not pity her, nor did he pry. He simply existed with quiet steadiness, a contrast to the chaos her life had become. Their conversation was brief, but Evelyn learned enough to see the weight he carried. Michael was a widower, his wife lost to illness 3 years prior. Since then, he had been raising his teenage son, Ethan, while managing the responsibilities of a modest mechanic shop. His words carried no bitterness, only the tired acceptance of someone who had endured. That night, Evelyn thought of him unexpectedly. She did not know why the memory of his calm voice lingered as she lay in bed, Amelia's soft breathing audible from the next room. Perhaps it was the rare comfort of meeting someone who understood loss, not in theory, but in the marrow of their being. The following days unfolded in the same rhythm of survival. Evelyn cooked simple meals, Amelia worked tirelessly, and the baby's steady kicks reminded her that life moved forward, whether she felt ready or not. But beneath the monotony, a seed of possibility had been planted. when she saw Michael again. This time at the market, his son standing awkwardly at his side, Evelyn felt the faintest spark of recognition, as though the universe insisted their paths should cross. Amelia noticed the exchange and raised an eyebrow afterward. "Who was that?" she asked. "Just someone who helped me at the hospital," Evelyn replied quickly, though the warmth in her tone betrayed her attempt at indifference. Amelia did not press, but her knowing smile lingered. Evelyn, however, silenced the thought before it could grow. She was 50, abandoned, and heavily pregnant. Romance belonged to another life, one that Daniel had already stolen from her. Still, as she tucked herself into bed that night, Evelyn whispered a quiet prayer she had not dared to speak in years, that perhaps life had not finished with her yet, and that beyond betrayal there might still be kindness waiting to be found. Healing through love. The winter air was sharp the night Evelyn went into labor. Snowflakes pressed against the hospital windows as Amelia rushed to her mother's side, her face pale but determined. Evelyn's body, weary from months of strain, battled exhaustion with each contraction. She whispered Daniel's name once, not in longing but in disbelief that he was nowhere to be found. It was Amelia's steady hand she gripped, Amelia's reassuring voice she heard through the haze of pain. Yet when the nurse stepped out to fetch water, another voice entered the room, deep, familiar, unexpectedly comforting. "I saw Amelia in the hallway," Michael said gently, stepping closer. "She looked like she could use someone to sit with her. Do you mind if I stay?" Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. She could not speak, but she nodded, grateful for his presence. Hours blurred into moments until at last the cries of new life filled the room. Evelyn gazed at her daughter's tiny face, fragile and perfect, and felt both wonder and sorrow. She had dreamed of Daniel holding this child, of redemption through fatherhood. Instead, she saw Michael's quiet smile in the corner, Amelia's joy, and realized that family was not always defined by blood. Michael offered to drive them home the following day. His old pickup rattled as it pulled into their driveway, but Evelyn had never felt more secure. He carried the infant's carrier with a tenderness that surprised even Amelia, who studied him with cautious approval. Over the next weeks, Michael's presence became a thread woven into their daily lives. He appeared with groceries when the cupboards ran low, insisted on fixing the leaky faucet in the kitchen, and made Amelia laugh with stories about his son Ethan's awkward teenage years. Evelyn protested at first, insisting she did not want to be a burden, but Michael only shook his head. "You're not a burden," he said simply. "Helping gives me purpose. And sometimes, that's what keeps us going." Ethan soon joined him on visits. Reserved and lanky, he carried the same quiet strength as his father. He and Amelia bonded quickly, sharing unspoken understanding of what it meant to lose stability too young. Evelyn often caught them talking at the table, their voices low, their laughter easing the heaviness of the house. For Evelyn, the challenge was not merely survival but silence, the silence that crept in late at night, reminding her of Daniel's betrayal. She often stared at her newborn sleeping peacefully beside her, wondering if she was enough. The years stretched before her like an uncertain road, and though Michael's kindness lit the path, she feared trusting it. One evening, as she rocked the baby in her arms, she found Michael repairing the broken step on her porch. Snow fell around him, dusting his coat, but he worked steadily without complaint. When he noticed her watching, he smiled in that quiet, reassuring way she had come to know. "You don't have to do this," she murmured. "Maybe I don't," he replied, brushing snow from his gloves. "But I want to. After my wife passed, I thought I'd never be useful again. Helping you reminds me that I still have something to give." The sincerity in his voice unsettled her. She had spent months believing she was unworthy of love, discarded at an age when society deemed women invisible. Yet here was a man who saw her not as broken, but as valuable. Still, fear held her back. She remembered Daniel's promises, the way he once spoke of devotion, only to abandon her when she needed him most. Could she risk trusting another man, even one as gentle as Michael? Days turned into weeks. The baby grew stronger, her cries softer, her grip on Evelyn's finger firmer. Amelia's laughter returned, brighter now that their lives held moments of joy. And Michael, always steady, always present, remained near. One afternoon, while sharing tea in the kitchen, Evelyn confessed her doubts. "I'm not the woman I once was. I'm older, tired, and carrying more baggage than anyone should." Michael set down his cup, his gaze unwavering. "Evelyn, love isn't about perfection. It's about two people who've been broken in different ways finding the strength to mend together. You see flaws. I see courage. You've survived what would have crushed others. That's what I admire." Her heart ached at his words, not from pain but from the fragile hope they stirred. She had thought love ended with betrayal, yet here was proof that perhaps it could be reborn. As evening fell, Michael reached across the table and placed his hand gently over hers. It was not a grand gesture, but it carried the weight of a promise, unspoken, cautious, but real. Evelyn did not pull away. For the first time since Daniel's departure, she felt warmth where only coldness had lingered. The baby stirred, Amelia hummed from the next room, and Michael's hand remained steady on hers. Evelyn realized that healing did not arrive in sudden triumphs, but in small, steady moments like this. Moments that whispered of the possibility of love after loss, redemption and new beginnings. Spring arrived slowly, brushing away the frost that had lingered since Evelyn's heartbreak. Her home, once weighed down by silence, now pulsed with gentle sounds. Her baby's soft cries, Amelia's laughter, Michael's low voice as he fixed another broken hinge. What had begun as survival was shifting into something resembling peace. Yet Evelyn knew that peace, like trust, was fragile. One afternoon, she opened the door to find Daniel standing on the porch. His appearance startled her, not because she had forgotten him, but because time had stripped him of the arrogance he once wore so easily. His hair was unkempt, his eyes hollow, his smile forced. "Evelyn," he began, his tone pleading. "Clara left me. She wasn't who I thought she was. I made a mistake. Please, let me come back." For a moment, the years of shared history tugged at her. The man before her was the same Daniel who had once whispered promises on their wedding night, the same man who had held Amelia as a newborn. But he was also the man who had walked away, leaving her pregnant and alone. Evelyn straightened, her hand resting protectively on her baby's carrier. "You didn't just leave me, Daniel," she said quietly. "You left your child. You left Amelia. You left every vow you ever made." "I was confused," he muttered, eyes darting away. "But we can fix this. I can help raise the baby." "No," Evelyn interrupted, her voice firm. "You don't get to walk in and pretend nothing happened. I am not your safety net. We've survived without you, and we're stronger for it." Amelia appeared in the doorway, her expression fierce. "She doesn't need you, Dad. None of us do." Daniel's shoulders sagged. Without another word, he turned and walked down the path, his figure shrinking into the distance. Evelyn felt no triumph, only release, the closing of a chapter that had bound her in sorrow. Later that evening, she found herself sitting with Michael on the porch. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. She recounted Daniel's visit, her voice steady. "You were brave," Michael said softly. "It takes strength to face the past without letting it drag you back." "I don't feel brave," she admitted. "I just feel free. For so long, I thought I needed Daniel to define my worth. But I was wrong." Michael turned toward her, his expression tender. "Evelyn, you've always been more than what he could see. And if you'll let me, I'd like to spend whatever time I have left showing you just how much you're worth." Her breath caught. She had sensed his affection in the small gestures, the quiet presence, but to hear it spoken so plainly stirred emotion she had tried to bury. "Michael," she began, hesitant. "What if I fail you? What if I'm too broken?" He reached for her hand, just as he had weeks before. "We've both known loss, but broken things can still be beautiful when pieced together with care. I don't want perfection. I want honesty. I want you." Tears blurred her vision, not of sorrow but of hope. She had believed love was finished for her, extinguished by betrayal. Yet here sat a man who had endured his own grief, offering her not promises of perfection but companionship in imperfection. Inside, Amelia and Ethan were playing cards at the table, laughter spilling through the open window. The baby cooed softly in her cradle, a reminder of new beginnings. Evelyn looked at the scene and realized her family had already expanded, not by force but by choice. The evening stretched on, filled with quiet conversation and the warmth of unspoken promises. When the stars emerged, Michael rose and kissed her hand gently, as if sealing a vow. Evelyn felt the tremor of something she thought lost forever, the possibility of love not built on illusion, but on resilience. That night, as she lay beside her newborn, Evelyn whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. Infidelity had shattered her, but in the rubble she had discovered unexpected strength. Daniel's betrayal had ended one life, but Michael's kindness had opened another. She understood now that survival was not the same as living, and at last, she was ready to live again. The story of Evelyn Carter did not close with bitterness, but with renewal. She had been abandoned, yes, but she was never truly alone. And as she drifted to sleep, the future no longer frightened her. It beckoned, like dawn after the longest night.